Hello, everyone. My name is Joshua Nugent, and I am an addict. This podcast is going to be centered around a few key concepts such as sobriety, addiction, taking better care of yourself, and how to stop being a slave to not only your surroundings, but ultimately your mind. I am in no way a master at life, just someone that wants to share with others what I know and maybe help some people along the way. Today, I want to share some of my experience, strength, and hope with you all. The purpose of this story sharing is not to have anyone feel sorry for me, but to give hope to the hopeless, to show people it is possible to bounce back in life, no matter how deep in the hole you think you are. You can always climb out with some drive, determination, and help from others. Now, let's begin this journey of my life. So, before I get into the addiction aspect, I really do have to take you back pretty much to the very beginning. I was born on November 22nd, 1996. My parents are Agnes and Matthew Nugent. I have three siblings, one older brother, a younger brother, and a younger sister. I'm the second oldest, and I'm the first child of my parents. My older brother has a different father than I. And growing up, like my childhood, there was a lot of tension between me and my older brother from very early on. Um, Part of it is like how I visualize it, how I perceived it. Um, to be totally honest, I have yet to really speak to my older brother about it from his perspective. Um, but from my perspective, there was a lack of connection from very early on. I don't know if it was because we had different parents or maybe it was just something that my older brother was going through, but I always took it as like there's something wrong with me. Like he doesn't want to be around me. Like what am I doing wrong? And yeah, that happened at a very early age, and my mother did her best to try to prevent that, but there's only so much you can do as a parent, and and not that I'm speaking from the perspective of a parent, but just looking back, I can see that it's very hard to try to control everything as a parent. There's just certain things you're not going to see, certain things you can't help, and yeah, so that was like the first thing that kind of took its toll on me at a very young age. And my parents gave me everything. My parents are middle class. My father is an operating engineer. He's worked with his union for over 30 years. He's always had a steady job. My mom has bounced back. She's riffed between jobs. She used to work as a cashier at Dollar Tree or Rite Aid or Walgreens, like different like stores like that. And she eventually became a school aide, and she works with kids, and she loves what she does. She's absolutely amazing at her job. She's always had such a deep passion for working with kids, and she's really good at her job. And yeah, my parents have always given me everything as a kid, or they tried to. Um, my parents are Catholic, also very conservative. So I grew up in that mindset, that household with that mindset, and things were good for a little bit up until about fifth grade. Was when the first real traumatic event happened in my life. So in the fifth grade, I got into a habit of not doing my homework. I felt like doing homework was not very fun. It was not something I wanted to do. And I had this really mean teacher. Um, I think for the purpose of this, I won't say her name, but she was older, and she'd been teaching for a very long time. If I had to guess at that point, it was probably over 30 years of teaching. So she was very old, but she had a reputation for being very aggressive, and there were a lot of kids that just did not want to be in her class. And unfortunately for me, I was in her class, or I got like when I stepped up to the fifth grade, and I was picked for her class. I was really sad because I heard a lot about what other kids had gone through, and I just was not looking forward to it. And like I said before, this was around the time I really stopped doing homework. I didn't really want to do it, and I think mainly there was just no real motivation to do it. And she would eventually like try to force me to do it, but like she would do it in a way where she would like make fun of me in front of a class, like she would single me out, and which was totally, like it was justified. Like I was a student that wasn't doing their work. She was trying to motivate me, but the way she was trying to motivate me was not very good. Not good for a child, especially for their self confidence, their self esteem. Other kids are looking at me, they're laughing at me. Kind of like suffering in silence a little bit, and that went on for from September to November, and my parents, they stepped in, and they took me out of it was a Catholic school, and they took me out, and I moved to a public school. And that public school, I graduated from that public school, and I met a lot of people through there, a lot of friends that I still know to this day. And it was not really an improvement. Like when I arrived at that school, I started to do good again. I started to do my work, but it didn't last very long. When I got to sixth grade, it was more or less the same thing. And this was around the time my relationship with my parents started to decline. I was just getting into constant trouble with them, and it was just a rocky relationship with my parents. I went through a lot going through middle school. I was molested in middle school around it was around the 8th grade when it happened. It was at a friend's party, a sleepover, and it was this kid who has a troubled past, but I wasn't aware of it at the time, and I kind of woke up to him on top of me, and I didn't really react. I really didn't do anything because I was just so scared. And he, as soon as he was finished and people were waking up, like I kind of just like went upstairs to the bathroom. I cried for like a solid like 20 minutes, and then came back downstairs as if nothing had happened. And that's been a constant theme running through my life. Was I was masking pain, but I wasn't actually facing it. I was trying to cover that pain, and I also wasn't talking about it. Like my parents tried to put me through therapy many times, and it just never worked because the therapist just couldn't get any of the stuff out of me. She tried her best. She was a good therapist, but I was just not in any position to talk. This was also around the same time that I tried to take my own life. I tried to take a bunch of pills, and that didn't work, thankfully. But and nobody knew that for a very long time until much, much later in life. But yeah, it was a nightmare. It was something that I hated. I hated myself. I hated my surroundings. I was in constant pain. My relationship with my parents was awful. My relationship with my older brother was awful. And this is just as a young kid, entering his teenage years. So when I got to my teenage years and I got into high school, um, just super unmotivated, didn't really care, never did any work, just hung out. My parents took me to a private school and they were paying for it, and you know, just absolutely no results. Never cared, and my relationship with my parents, got worse and worse, and it was a constant battle. Every day it was a constant battle. I was, at some point I was like skipping school, and you know, looking back on it, silly, but at the time it was serious. But I remember calling out of school. Like I figured out that my voice on the phone sounded a lot like my father's, and I would call out acting like him, and then eventually they caught on, and because teenager being stupid and greedy, constantly calling out doesn't look, sounds very suspicious. Maybe the first couple of times it works, but um, yeah, so that happened, and like things like that would happen, and it was just constantly like something new would pop up, and again, like trying to mask that pain. Like for what I used to do as a teenager was I would play video games a lot, or I would hang out with my friends a lot, to try to cover up that pain. I would never talk about it. I would never have an honest conversation with anyone. And I remember I would lie a lot. It would just constantly be lie after lie, and I at it got to a point where I just couldn't remember what lies I was telling and who I was lying to. And also, this is around the time, when I was hanging out with my middle school friends. There was about around 10 to 12 of them. I don't remember off the top of my head, but there were a lot of us, and we would hang out. And I remember I was just such a jerk. I would constantly emotionally bully people, and I was at the mindset of, if I didn't know you, right, I was gonna hurt you emotionally before you hurt me. And that's how I lived my life throughout those 4 years of high school. And I had people that friends that approved of my actions, but deep down inside, like I knew what I was doing was wrong, but I didn't care, because I had people like that showed that they cared about me, that they loved me. But in a way, maybe it was their way of expressing how they felt, with their pain. And I'm not gonna go into details about people and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, that's how I was. I was in a lot of pain, emotional pain. Um, I played sports, and that was something that was always huge for my confidence, and that was something that I enjoyed a lot. And right around high school, I just stopped playing those sports. I was just so unmotivated to play anything. I just didn't care anymore. I just wanted to hang out and play video games, and I didn't really care about my future. I didn't really care about, you know, how I treated people. I stopped caring. And when I saw my friends leave, most of my friends leave for college, it was a bit of a wake up call, but not really. I was sad to see a lot of them go, but this was around the time, like senior year of high school, was when I started to get into drugs. Um, so the drug that I first tried was, I first drank first. I drank alcohol first. I drank with some friends, and it was a fun time. It was something that I'd never experienced before, and I had some friends to drink with, and We had a bottle of vodka, and we went over to a friend of a friend's house, and it was fun. It was a blast, and that was something that like I looked forward to. That was something that I wanted to keep doing with my friends, and eventually, alcohol turned into marijuana, and that was even more fun. And eventually marijuana turned into acid and mushrooms, and that was about as far as I got in my drug career. There were just certain drugs that I knew not to do. Like I never did coke. I've never cocaine. I've never done heroin. I've never done crystal meth. Um, I've never done anything beyond that. The only drugs I did that were intense was acid and mushrooms, and the occasional Adderall. But weed and alcohol were very consistent. Acid was not as consistent, but it was more of when it was available to get. So yeah, my drug of choice is marijuana and acid. And the first time I did those drugs, it just totally changed. Like especially acid, just totally changed my perspective of life. Um, Everything changed. It was so euphoric. It was unlike anything I ever experienced in my life. It was the most fun I ever had at that time. And it was something that I wanted to keep doing over and over and over again. But due to the availability, I didn't get it very often. And I'm very lucky that that was the case, because if I had continued down that path, I wouldn't want to think about, like, I see where I could potentially end up. I always tell people that if I had continued to take acid at an alarming rate, like I would have ended up in a straitjacket. I would have went crazy. But going back to the story, yeah, I was introduced to all these drugs around the same time, right around end of high school, beginning of college. I didn't go to college. I kind of just stayed at my parents' house, not really doing anything. And eventually I did move out of my parents' house. I moved with my mom's, my mom's sister. And I was there for about 3 months, and she got tired of me, got tired of my antics. Not that I was doing any drugs, but it was just she was so fed up with my laziness that she wanted me out. And I moved back, and my parents weren't too thrilled about that. And it was just me leaving, me trying to find a way out of my pain. So I thought by leaving my parents' house that maybe I could find some stability, but I was still carrying myself around. I was still in pain. I still had a lot of pain and trauma from my childhood, my teenage years, and now I was mixing drug addiction with it. Not even realizing that I'm an addict at the time. This was around 2019, and just no sense of purpose, no sense of future. Don't really care about where I'm going. All I want to do is just get high, drink away my pain, drink away my sadness, smoke away, take acid and trip for 8 hours or 12 hours, or take mushrooms and just have an experience. And my group of friends, some of them were interested in Buddhism. So, growing up, I was Catholic, and I stopped believing in the faith. I would say around high school, maybe 15, 16. And these group of friends introduced me into Buddhism, something totally different. And I was very intrigued by it, by how different it was to Catholicism. And also, in a way, it was like to be rebellious towards my father, because I wanted absolutely nothing to do with him. And so I got into Buddhism. I liked the idea. I liked meditation. I thought meditation was good. But it was like kind of like flirting with the idea. There was no real commitment to it. So I thought that in order to have like a spiritual experience, because I was still spiritually curious, but not really. I think it was more of a front to try to show people that I was spiritual. But I thought that to have a spiritual experience, I needed to do drugs. So I needed to do acid and mushrooms. So a lot of my trips were centered around that, to try to have a spiritual experience. And maybe the first few times it was like that, and I know people say that they had like a real they use it in a way to reset their mind, to reset everything. And this is no way bashing people that do it. This is just my own personal experience and how I abused it. But I would abuse acid to the point where like I was having like nightmares, and I was losing my sense of reality. And sometimes I would smoke pot while tripping, and that just increased the paranoia. And it got to a point where my pot smoking made me super paranoid almost every time I smoked it. But I was so dependent on it, like my body and my mind were so dependent on marijuana too, that I just couldn't stop. And again, it was just used to mask my pain. It was just used to cover up the sadness that I felt in my heart. And I wasn't really aware of why I was doing it, like for the first 4 or 5 years of like my whole drug career of taking drugs. But that's what I did. And I continued this for a while. This was how my life was, and my parents found out about it, and they were just kept disappointing them, and angering them, and just totally like pushing them to the point where if things had gotten worse, like they would have thrown me out of the house. And I guess to finally bring up what broke the straw that broke the camel's back was leading up to the final time that I took drugs, I guess, or the week. So the week of me giving it up, deep down inside, like when I was smoking, leading up to that week, I knew I was an addict. I knew that there was something wrong. Like I was relying on drugs to make me feel better about myself. And I knew that had to stop. I was only getting older, and something needed to change. So, but I didn't really know what the solution was. Like, it was like almost like a cry for help, but like not really knowing where to cry to or who to cry to. My parents didn't really understand the addiction aspect, and neither did my siblings, and no one around me that I knew understood addiction. So I decided, before I even get to that, so I keep having these sessions of smoking where I'm like, you know what, I need to stop. I need to quit. This isn't fun anymore. This is like, it's like a full-time job now. I'm spending so much money trying to get high, and I'm not even enjoying it anymore. And same with drinking. Drinking was the same way. I would go to the bar. A lot of the times, like, I would go to a bar and I wasn't even drinking with anyone. I would just drink by myself and just drink my sadness away. And, you know, just everything was catching up to me. You know, all the feelings, all the years, like not taking care of myself mentally and spiritually and emotionally and even sometimes physically. It was getting too much, and I needed a way out. So I had the grand idea of tripping on mushrooms to get a spiritual experience to help me, to show me how to get out of it. And it's, typical addict mindset. So I went to my dealer's house, got the mushrooms, took the mushrooms, and immediately just started feeling paranoid. Was not good for me. I was in public, which is really bad. I was walking around in public. My plan was to go to the park and just be there for 6 hours, but I couldn't even make my way to the park, and I was like having a panic attack, and something in my mind like clicked. It was like, you need to get home. You can't be here. If you don't get home, your parents are going to worry even more. Because prior to the week leading up to when I decided to get help, I also lost my job. I was working at a supermarket in the meat department. Good job, had a union, had potential to get into a union, and I screwed that up because I got high and didn't show up to work for almost 2 weeks. Eventually, the cops came to my parents' house, knocked on the door. They said, "Yeah, his job doesn't know if he's dead or what. Like they just want to know what's going on." And the embarrassment that my parents felt that day was a lot. And usually what happens when I'm in trouble is my dad is the one that, gets angry and gets in my face and yells with purpose. And my mom is the one that kind of stays quiet. And I knew something was wrong when it was opposite. It wasn't my dad that was mad. It was my dad that was quiet. And it was my mom that was angry. And I knew something was wrong. So that happened, right? Then I go and I try to trip on shrooms and panic attack, paranoia, and then I decide I need to get home. So I don't know what drove me that day. I don't know what happened, but I knew I had to get home. So I get home and I go to the bathroom and I immediately throw up because I'm feeling so sick and nauseous. So I throw up and I pass out in the bathroom floor. And it was, I've never felt so low in my life. It was like that moment, it was like, this is pathetic in my mind. I was like, the bathroom door closed, no one's home, but it was like such a sad sight. And I knew it was sad. I knew it was pathetic. And then when I woke up, because my parents were coming in through the door, and I'm still feeling kind of nauseous and sick, I immediately run upstairs, and my mom's like, telling me like, you need to get your act together, like this really can't keep going on. And I knew then and there, like, okay, I need to get help. There's no way that this can continue. There's no way. So that night I decide to Google rehabs because I knew I needed to make a change, but I didn't know where to really start, and I knew I needed help. So I Googled some rehabs, and I eventually found one that took my father's insurance. Very lucky that happened. But yeah, it took his insurance, and I went, but it was out of state. I live in New York City, And the rehab that I went to was in Manchester, New Hampshire. It's about 6 hours away. And, never been almost, I mean, I've been out of the state a couple of times, but I've never traveled that north. I had no idea what to expect. And the day that I got sober, the first day that I got sober, because I'd called and, I arranged for someone to come pick me up. I told myself, like, I need to get sober before I go to that rehab. So my sobriety date is May 23rd of 2021. And a week after my sobriety date, a woman picked me up. And she drove 6 hours to come pick me up and then had to drive 6 hours back. And I was so petrified. I was so scared. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, And, she spoke to me in the car, and, she was, she could tell I was nervous. So, she tried to small talk, and eventually I get into the house, the rehab house. It was, they have a facility, and then they have a house that they keep the patients in. And every day, a van would come, pick up the patients, and then drive them to the facility. There was a men's house and a women's house. So I get to this house in New Hampshire, and I'm petrified. I'm seeing all these people I've never met in my life. And they're all cleaning. It was like they were all doing chores, which was like really weird, like a really weird thing to see. And they're doing my intake, and they have to check your bags, just in case you have anything on you, any drugs or paraphernalia or whatever on you. And I didn't have any. And they did my intake, and just so petrified, just so scared. And I remember that night, the only thing that stuck out to me that night, and I'll never forget this. I was upstairs on the second floor, because there was the basement, and there's like the main floor. Then you go upstairs, and there's like the bedrooms, the second floor, and then there's like a third floor that has like more bedrooms, and then there's like an area where people can hang out. And I remember sitting on the second floor, and I was writing in my journal, just so scared, just had no idea what I was like about, like the path I was about to walk on. And this tall white guy sees me writing, nervous, and he had like a bunch of tattoos, and he had bright blue eyes, and blondish beard and hair, and he looks up to me, and like he raises his arms up in the air, like kind of like a hey, what's up, gesture. And he says like, hey man, if you need anything, some shampoo, toothpaste, anything like that at all, you just let me know. And I remember just like looking at him like why is he talking so slow? But then like the thought like registered like, oh, this guy's actually being nice. And I said thank you, and I introduced myself, and he told me his name. And he's a really good friend. Really good friend of mine. Someone that I was really close with in rehab, and just throughout my whole treatment stay. And I still have his information. I don't message him as much as I should, to be honest. But he it was like the first person to ever really show a genuine sense of caring, and So rehab. So I get into rehab the first day, and I do the intake, and it's a lot of questions, and it's they tell you who you're assigned to, which therapist you're assigned to. There's group therapy, and then there's one-on-one therapy, and then you're in groups, and you're doing activities with like with the community, and there's like two people that are running the groups, and then you have like the therapists that do their own thing, and then they run like an information like something related to addiction. And I remember like the first month of just like listening so intently and taking so many notes and just participating as much as I could. And it meant a lot. I really wanted to get this, and I heard like there's like a crazy statistic when it comes to rehabs. I don't know off the top of my head, but like there's like some crazy statistic that like most people that go to rehab don't make it out, like in terms of like when they get out, they don't stay sober. And I don't remember the number, but it's like a crazy number. And I knew that I didn't want to fall in that percentage. I wanted to be part of the percentage that made it. And talking with people, throughout my stay, and just learning about different people, and just finding out like where they're from, how they grew up, how many rehabs they've gone to. I've spoken to people that have gone 2-3 times. I've spoken to people that gone 10-11 times. Everyone has different drugs of choice. And just understanding like where people are at in their life, and understanding that everyone has a story, and that it's important to have an understanding and to try to see life from the other person's perspective. So eventually, when you go into rehab, they suggest that you work a program. So for a lot of people, they choose Alcoholics Anonymous. So for those of you that don't know what Alcoholics Anonymous is, Alcoholics Anonymous is a 12-step program that helps you to not necessarily like stop your addiction, but it's more or less like a solution. It's like a remedy. It's like when you're sick, right? When you're sick, you take something for it. Like, maybe you have the flu and you want to take like some cough some medicine, like the syrup or the pill or whatever. And this is the solution for addicts. You work a program, and that program is your medicine. It's your solution. These 12 steps are your solution to a better life and a better sober you. So what was special about this rehab was they were offering another program. And the program, they were offering two programs. It was either you work Alcoholics Anonymous, which is a 12-step program, or you work something called Dharma Recovery, which is also another 12-step program. So Dharma Recovery is it's a program that's inspired by Buddhist practices and principles, and it takes the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path as your 12 steps. So, for those of you who do not know what the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path are, the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path is... Well, I'll start with the Four Noble Truths. So the Four Noble Truths are that there is suffering, there is a cause of suffering, there is an end to suffering, and there is a path to the end of suffering. That's the Four Noble Truths. And the Eightfold Path is wise understanding, wise intention, wise speech, wise action, wise livelihood, wise effort, wise mindfulness, and wise concentration. So basically, what all that means is trying to live sober, like addiction free, with those key concepts in mind. And Alcoholics Anonymous is slightly different from Dharma recovery, but it leads you to the same thing. It leads you to the same goal. And I chose Dharma recovery because of the Buddhist aspects, the Buddhist practices and principles, and like I was curious about, and I wanted to learn more, but I didn't really have an outlet to learn. So I chose Dharma recovery, and there were a few other guys in the program that also chose it. So it was really nice to have that support group. It was like 4 or 5 of us, and in the beginning, we would meet up upstairs. They called it the Crow's Nest, where like everyone can hang out. There was 4 or 5 of us, and we'd meet up, close to curfew, and we would just talk about the book. We'd read from the book. We'd talk about it, and just to see life from to see how other people interpret it, and to really get inspired by it, and it was amazing. And eventually, throughout my treatments, during my stay in treatment, I got a mentor. And a mentor is kind of like a sponsor, for those of you that know. For those of you that don't know, a sponsor or mentor is someone that basically someone who's been through the 12 steps, either the 12 steps of AA or the Four Noble Truths and Eightfold Path. They've been through all the steps. They've done all the work for it, right? Because there's questions that you have to answer for each step that you have to do. There's for Dharma recovery, there's questions you answer after every Four Noble Truth and the Eightfold Path. And for AA, there's working a 4th step, the notorious 4th step for those of you that know. So I found a mentor, and my mentor helped me through a lot. He basically helped me break down where my trauma was in life. And he showed me, or not really showed me how to do it. He kind of just like asked questions. That's really all he did, was just ask questions, and just helped me break down where the trauma and the pain was. And also, this is mixed with the fact that I am getting solo therapy almost every, like at least 2 times a week, but getting group therapy every day. And, I really took it serious. This was something that I really wanted. And I was in treatment. This wasn't a typical 30-day treatment. Like, not at all. This program was extended care. So I was in treatment from May 31st of 2021 to October 14th of 2021. So that's like, off the top of my head, that's at least over 100 days, I believe. But I was in treatment for a while, and I learned a lot. And, a lot of meditation, a lot of yoga, which really helped, a lot of therapy, a lot of talking to my mentor, just putting myself out there in the community, talking to people, talking about sobriety, just diving deep into my sobriety, and really understanding where my pain lied, and understanding what generational pain is. Like, I had no idea the pain that I was feeling and the pain that I had was essentially passed on from a prior generation, and just learning about my mother and father's history, and learning about their pain, and learning how they cope with their pain, Not that they purposely wanted to make me feel bad, or it wasn't their intention to do that at all. But sometimes in life, when something traumatic happens, we don't treat it right away, especially in this day and age. We don't treat it right away. We keep it silent. We keep it to ourselves. And in turn, we suffer. And what we don't realize is 20 or 30 years will go by, and you'll start your own family, if that's what you intend to do. But for a lot of people, they start a family, and then they pass on that pain to their kids. And then their kids experience this pain, and then they don't know what's going on. And then 20, 30 years later, for them, the same thing happens, and the cycle just continues. And it just continues and continues and continues. And what I learned in rehab, and this is one of the most powerful things that I've learned, is that you have to break those chains that bound you. That generational pain, whatever it may look like for you, because everyone's pain is different, and everyone's origins of that pain is different. But somehow when you talk to people that have gone through that generational pain, right, or that addiction pain, right, whatever it is, you can almost relate to that person. You can almost it's like they're taking the words out of your mouth. And you're like, wait 1 second, how do you know what I'm going through? How do you know, and you can find people. You're not going to relate to everyone with pain. People's pains are different, but I promise you can find someone that has gone through what you're going through. Maybe details are different, maybe certain things are different, but it's related. It's almost the same thing. And it's scary, and that's what I learned when I was in rehab. And the people that I was able to relate to, people telling me about how they were molested, and the things that they went through and how they almost took their lives. For a long time, I thought I was alone with that. I didn't have anyone I could relate to. And then suddenly, when I get to New Hampshire, I find people I can relate to. I can find people I can talk to about it. I found people that can help me and support me, and it was amazing. It was something that I needed. It was something that I had longed for so long in my life, was to be related to. And it was absolutely amazing. And I get out of treatment, right? I met a lot of great people through treatment, still have a lot of their information. And I move into a sober house. And a sober house, for those of you that don't know, is essentially a group of people that are all living together in one house, and they're all trying to stay sober. A lot of guys, at least the sober house that I went to, a lot of guys are just getting out of treatment. They're just coming out of rehab. Some guys are coming out of jail. Some guys are homeless. Like this is the reality. This is where I really learned who I really was and the man that I became today because of this experience. So like I said, I got out of treatment October 14th of 2021. Probably a week before that, maybe 10 days before I got out of treatment, I moved into the sober house. And, I had to fill out a process and information, and, I met the owner of the sober house, who to this day I owe my life. And it was scary at first because I was moving out of a comfortable environment, and I was moving into, again, people I don't know. And it was scary at first, but over time I've learned to open up and talk to people, and living in sober living it's eye-opening, because you don't know who's going to leave. And that was the thing that always kept me on my toes, was you don't know who's going to leave. You could be talking to somebody one day and everything's fine, and then the next day they're leaving the house because, and this is not always the case. There are people that leave on good terms, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people get back out. They go back out. They do drugs again. They forget where they came from. They forget the process. And it was really sad seeing that. It was sad seeing, those people leave, because you saw the light. You saw when they actually were on the path. You saw how amazing they were. And not that they're not amazing when they're taking drugs, but it's sad to see that. There's pain in that. And it's a reminder of constantly of like, this could be me. I could easily get back out there as well. So it was a constant reminder of that. And I remember this one guy that I was there. He had just gotten out of treatment, and he was kind of like me in a way where he wasn't really sure, how to really approach anyone. He was just kind of quiet, kept to himself. There'd be some guys that he'd talk to, but for the most part, like, he kept to himself. And there was a situation eventually. He lived in the house maybe for a few months, I would say. I don't remember exactly, but there was a situation where he got kicked out. Not to go into super details about it, but he got kicked out of the house. And there was one guy in the house who I absolutely love and adore. Was trying to help him, but his patience was, this guy helps anyone out. If you needed to go to a meeting, he would drive you. If you needed to go to the store, he would take you. Like, he helped guys. This guy was a real, like a real team player in the house. And everybody looked up. A lot of guys looked up to him. A lot of guys loved talking to him, hanging out with him. Me included. I loved hanging out with him. I loved working out with him. He's just a silly, goofy guy just trying to get sober. And he was very smart and very passionate about his sobriety. So I remember being in the car with this guy, the goofy guy, and we were driving to see the guy that just got kicked out of the house. And I'll never forget that look that I saw of him being outside of this warming center, because it was winter time and it was really cold, and the warming station is basically a place where homeless people can go, just to stay warm for 4 or 5 hours. And he was there, and he had like none of his possessions. They were all at the sober house, and the owner told him, when you find a place, you can come and pick it up. And I remember this look of defeat in his eyes. Like, his face was sad, but when I looked into his eyes, I could tell like this was it. Like, there was no coming back. And I didn't want to believe it at the time. But I found out after seeing him like that, after looking at him at the warming center and then driving away, I found out a few weeks later after seeing him like that he had died. He had OD'd. And that was tough. That was the first time I'd ever spoken to someone, lived with someone. I didn't really know him that well. Not because I didn't want to, but, his guard was up. And it was a shock. It was a real wake-up call. And the one thing I'll never forget also was every time I go down in the basement to do my laundry, I'd always see his stuff. That was downstairs. All the things that were there that belonged to him. I would always see it. Every time I walked downstairs, there was always a constant reminder of him. And no one ever came to pick it up. No family members ever came. Nobody. It was so sad to see that. It was like his family had given up on him. Like they didn't even want what he had. And that's when I knew of how serious this was. That's how I knew how serious this addiction is. You know, regardless of what the drug of choice is, it is a real struggle. And you need to take care of yourself. You know, and addiction goes farther than drugs. There's so many other things you can be addicted to. You know, it's not just drugs. You know, there could be gambling addiction. There could be sex addiction. Even video game addiction. You know, food can be an addiction. You know, porn can be an addiction. You know, it knows no limits. And basically what I'm trying to say is that there is a way out. There's always a way out of these addictions. And for some people, they don't realize how deep their addiction goes until it's too late. And for some people, they may think like, well, it's not that serious, Josh. Like, so what if I like to gamble here and there? And so what if I, watch porn here and there, or I like to eat food, a lot of food here and there. Like, what's it to you? And to that I say, the choice is ultimately yours. I'm not here to convince people of anything. I'm just simply sharing what I know. And the journey that I'm on right now, and everything that's happened that's led me to this moment, it's been a blessing to have walked this path, to have met the people that I've met, and to have gone through what I've had to gone through. Now, do I still experience, emotional pain? And do I experience, do I still get angry? Yes, of course. I'm human. I'm going to experience anger. I'm going to experience sadness. I'm not like a robot. I'm not saying that once you get sober, like all your problems just magically vanish. No, like you still have to deal with life. And life can be hard. If you have no map, you have no sense of direction of where you want to go with life, life can be very hard. What I'm simply offering is a potential solution. A potential, a way to show people, that can relate, because not everyone can relate, but a way to help people, find that path, find that purpose, find that inner peace, that tranquility, that happiness, and after and just coming to an end to my story, I moved back. I lived at the sober house in October, and I moved back to New York around June to live with my family and to be with my family. And things didn't work out the way that I wanted them to. I had set expectations for how things were going to go when I came back. And that's okay. I could be angry about it. I could be upset. I can wave my fist in the air and curse the world for, why me? Why is this happening to me? But it's easy to do that. It's easy to do that. And I rather, okay, this is what happened. This is the hand that I was dealt with. How can I make this work? And, I'm still sober to this day. Thanks to my practice, thanks to the people that have supported me. As of today, I'm 590 days sober. And it's the longest I've ever been sober. I've tried when I tried getting sober, like I could get like maybe 1 or 2 months and then break off. But with this is like, this is the longest I've ever been, and like something's working for me, you know. And I'm happy and proud of my progress, and I want to share that with people, and I want to share more about the process, because this story is just to showcase, you know, that, like I said, the experience, strength, and hope. There is a way out, and I'm very happy with where I'm at today. There are things that I need to work on. There are things that I can improve, but I rather take my worst day sober than my best day high. Because at least my worst day sober, I'm actually dealing with my problems. And that I know that I can call people if I need that help. And just being of service to people too is so important. Just helping people is so important. And to be of service and to pick up that phone when someone needs it. And to go back to that. And with this podcast, this is what I want to do. I want to be of service to people. I want to help people. And this is just the beginning. So, with that, I just want to thank everyone who's given this podcast a listen. Feel free to share if this story inspired you, or maybe share it to someone that needs to listen. The hope and plan is to continue making these episodes and further sharing to the world that inspired me and what gets me going in life. If no one has told you this today, you are special in your own way. You are worth it, and you are loved. Take care, and God bless to you all. Until next time, peace.